Faithful Responders consists of 2 deputies and 2 firefighters with nearly 40 combined years of service as first responders. Scotty, Jonathan, Clint, and Jacob invite you to listen as they discuss various issues that first responders deal with in their daily lives as well as on the job. The crazy schedules, training, mandatory OT, and the extra gigs provide little time for family, let alone going to or committing to a church. Their prayer is that this will be something used to help keep you encouraged and equipped in your faith. So sit on back, but don't fall asleep. Yes, that means you firefighters. And as always, stay safe.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Scotty with Faithful Responders. We got another episode here that we're about to release and drop. We have a very, very awesome guest. He worked with my dad for the Atlanta Police Department, and I'm really excited about this. He's got a great story, and we're gonna really enjoy listening to him. His name is Sergeant Richard Straut. Richard, we're really blessed to have you here, and we kind of basically do the same thing we always do. Just get you to start off telling you about yourself, and then we'll get into how faith came into your career and your life and everything you've done, and we'll just go from there. So go ahead.
Well, thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I just hope that the story I'm going to tell you inspires some folks out there and let you know that you're not alone. Lord's watching. He's there. First of all, I just want to say that, I've got I have the most wonderful parents that any person could ever have. And they raised me right. I was in Sunday school every Sunday and Wednesday night service. So my whole childhood was in the church. And you really don't think about it growing up. It's just a way of life. And, we had devotion every evening in our house. And my dad was a deacon in the church. And every Sunday morning we were in Sunday school and then church after every week. It was without fail. So I was basically, introduced to the Lord early. And I accepted Christ as my personal Savior when I was 8 years old. I met with my pastor, Reverend Ivy, and I was baptized shortly thereafter. So I grew up with Christ in my heart. And I always knew he was there. I didn't worry about anything. I was always a straight A student. I attended Rockbridge Elementary and then Stone Mountain High School. And in our church youth group, we used to do retreats every year to one of our church members' mountain cabin in North Georgia. His name was I.B. Melton, and he was known as the mayor of Pine Lake, Georgia. Probably know where Pine Lake's changed a lot since then. But he sang in the choir with my mom, and our youth group used to go to his mountain cabin, and it was like a retreat. So we would go up there, and usually some of the guys in the choir would bring guitar and hymnals, and we would sing, and we would get on that mountaintop, if you will, as far as worshiping. And excuse me, it's kind of emotional. We were up there one time, and the Lord was pressing on me, and I could tell. And I was like, Lord, I'm really not ready for anything. I want to just live my own life. Why are you pressing me? What do you want? And I talked to my mom, and I talked to some of the youth group, and they said, well, if the Lord's pressing on you, he's not going away. He's going to be there. So I basically finally came to the realization that I should surrender. And I said, Lord, okay, I'm tired of fighting you. I'm not going to do my own thing. I'll do what you want me to do. Just guide me. Let me know what you want. Well, it wasn't a few days after that a gentleman showed up at my house that worked with my dad, and he was a major in the Georgia Army National Guard. And I was like, Lord, is this it? How did all this happen? So he goes, look, why don't you come down and join us for the weekend, and you can see what it's like. I said, okay. So I went down to 935 East Confederate, was the Georgia Army National Guard headquarters. And I met with him, and we had lunch. All these rumors you hear about the Army with the bad food, let me tell you something. It was the best food I ever ate. And these guys were the most fun you have ever been around. It was a brotherhood like you've never seen. It was the 190th MP Company. And he goes, look, your dad said you were looking for something. And I said, well, I don't know if I am or not. He goes, well, look, let's see where you're at. Let's take a couple tests and see if you qualify to join us. And if one day you decide this is your path you want to go, we'll know where you're at. So he took me in a room and took a test, and he said, I've never seen anyone scored as high. He said, I want to give you another test. He said, this is to see if you want to be an officer. And so I took that test and blew it out of the water again. And he goes, I hope you make the decision, because we would love to have you. So, we're all done here today. We hope you enjoyed yourself. And, let us know if you're interested. We'll talk again. So there's absolutely no pressure. And I went home and told my dad, I said, you know what? I had a really good time. And it's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. It's not like we're in a conflict around the world and they're going to ship me off. So it would give me some good training, and I would have a trade, and that they pay for your college. And I'm like, wow, this is too good to be true. This is going to be great. So I prayed about it, and I said, Lord, I don't really want to do it, but I could feel that this was the path he wanted me to go. Well, before I knew it, this is around October of 1985, I was signed up in February. I was on a bus to Fort McClellan and going to basic training. And let me tell you something. It was like Boy Scout camp. I had an absolute blast because I was already in pretty good physical shape, although they got you in a lot better physical shape. And I was lucky because I had a little bit of intellectual knowledge in that, I used to work on cars and I was pretty familiar with things. And so there were some things that come up. I'm not going to go into it, but I was able to repair some things that went wrong that saved my drill sergeants. I got them out of some problems. So I was like the golden kid. It was like, wait, this is good. This is a lot of fun. I thought it was supposed to be hard. But I got in some of the best.
Everybody listening, this been the basics like, this is the guy. This is the lock in the sock that we thought about every night.
So you know the scene in Stripes where the first day you're talking to your drill sergeant, you're telling a little bit about your stuff. That's pretty real. Well, here we go. First night I'm in there, I'm sitting around 50 soldiers. And they're all talking about, where they came from and, how they grew up and stuff like that. And here comes the press.
Take your time.
Lord says, tell it.
You got it.
I said, right now? I said, well, guys, I'm a born again Christian. I'm here because God wants me here. And if you want to have true freedom and you want to have peace, I'm asking you, come talk to me. We'll talk about accepting Jesus Christ in your life, and you'll have true peace. And the next Sunday, one of my fellow soldiers come to me and started crying. He goes, I can't do it anymore. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm being pressed. The Lord wants me. I said, look, it's pretty simple. I said, just bow your head right now and ask Jesus to come into your heart. And he did it right there. And we became very close. Chris Childress went to church every Sunday after that together and worshiped together. And that right there let me know that as soon as you surrender to where the Lord wants you to be, you're going to find the answer. And I became probably the fittest I've ever been in my entire life. And, made it through basic training. And as soon as I came back, it was not 7 days later that I was hired on the Atlanta Police Department. 7 days after that, I was in the police academy. 6 months after that, I was already graduating on the street. It was lightning speed. And all these doors were opening up so fast that I almost couldn't figure out what was going on. That following March, I was at Georgia Military Institute going to school to be an officer, all while doing this other stuff. And while I was down there, I was in college. They would come down to GMI and do our college classes, which was an 18-month program. So it was like, it was a whirlwind of things going on. So I'm doing all this at the same time, going through OCS in the Army. It was an 18-month program while I'm a police officer on the Atlanta Police Department.
How old are you at this time?
21. So 2021. So, while I'm on the police department, I'm never at any point not, I don't push my belief on anyone else, but I let it be known that, I was a born again Christian. And as a matter of fact, that's how I met Sergeant Brooks. I worked an extra job. You weren't allowed to work these details, to make a few extra bucks unless you worked for a supervisor. So I volunteered to work at the Omni, and I was a brand new rookie, and that's where I met, you were a detective at the time, Detective Fred Brooks at the Omni, and we worked together, and I knew Fred was a good Christian fella, and we worked together, and you kind of wanted to gravitate toward people that gained your respect. And Fred was one of the ones that I said, I would like to be around this guy because, he's a professional. He treats people with dignity and respect. He's somebody that, you looked up to. It's like a big brother on the police department. So Fred was one of the ones that, him and Ken Cullifer and those guys that worked the Omni details, it's almost like I would have worked there for nothing. They're paying you like $20 an hour. It's pretty good. You're not making very much money at the time, so any extra few dollars was helpful. So I got to know Fred and Ken Cullifer and some of the other people over there. And, you're building relationships while you're going through all this. Well, you continue to do your duties for 3 years. I did my service in the military 1 week in a month. And coming up on my third year, I was assigned, I'd already graduated OCS, and I was heading down to Fort Stewart at Camp Oliver for my 2-week annual training in my aviation unit. I'd graduated as a flight platoon leader and assigned to a helicopter unit in Winder. So I was tasked with being the convoy commander to get set up before our unit got down there. And so they had a lot of faith in me as a brand new second lieutenant. And so I went down there and got everything set up. And, well, our rotor head bolts started backing off, so they canceled my drill. So we had to pack everything up and come back. And we shut everything down. It just so happened that the end of that week, my brother was getting married. And I was, in the wedding. So it kind of worked out good that I was able to get home early for the wedding. Well, the very next day, I called into my precinct and asked the supervisor, look, my drill has been canceled and, I'm back home. What does the watch look like? He said, well, we've had 4 people calling sick and we have a whole sector that's uncovered. Do you think you could come to work? And me not wanting my colleagues to not have, support, I said, well, sure, I'll come in. He said, well, you're going to be in beat 112 and there is nobody in beat 111 or 113. So you got the whole section, and that was that area from I-20 all the way up to Bankhead Highway and Ashby Street on one side. It's a pretty rough area.
Yeah.
So the watch started off just like anything else. I'd, made a few arrests of individuals and things like that. And it was coming up on getting dark. I'd not eaten dinner or anything like that. And I'm down there at usually where a lot of officers met up was number 3 Ashby Street. It's a little Amoco gas station there. And I get a call. It's called a Signal 45. It's a larceny, somebody theft. And usually when you're a police officer, you don't think much of a 45. It's pretty simple. If you can find the guy, you make the arrest, take the person to pretrial detention, do your report, and that's it. This particular call was at a location where I knew of 3 other officers, 2 other officers had encounters where the suspect disarmed them. Those officers survived those encounters, but I knew of the history. So that was in the back of my mind. So I let the dispatcher know that I was en route and arrived on the scene, and I encountered a cab driver who said that he had taken a gentleman home and he went in his apartment and he said he was going to bring back the payment but never paid for the cab fare. And I said, well, that's a pretty simple situation. And I asked him, I said, well, are you willing to prosecute? He said, sure. And he said it was $8. It was $5 when he went in, but the meter's still running. It said $8 and something. Well, I said, so this guy is going to risk being arrested over $8. I understand. So I asked the dispatcher. I said, radio, I'm going to do a knock and talk. Can you start another unit over there? And she says, we don't have anybody available. Well, I being a young soldier and a police officer, you got these ego things going on in your brain that you're a tough guy. Well, there's always somebody tougher. But one thing about being a police officer, I always knew that the Holy Spirit was with me, so I never really worried about being injured, hurt, killed, or anything. I knew where I was going. I had complete faith in, where my life was, and the Lord would basically protect me, or I had no worries whatsoever. It didn't, there's 2 parts of that. One is you think you're young and it'll never happen to you. One is I've got extra level of protection. I'm a born again Christian. I know where I'm going. So you have a sense of relief. At the same time, you need to be smart, but your ego outweighs your ability to be, smart, like call for other units and be patient and wait. Well, not me. I decided to go knock on the door, and the guy opens the door. I said, hey, man, this guy says you didn't pay the cab fare. I'm here to investigate. Would you like to come out and talk to me about this? He said, oh, I already paid the guy. I said, well, okay, no problem. But, I still need to find out who you are and to put it in my police report. Do you mind coming outside? Well, he says, hold on a minute. Well, for a police officer, that means that, don't give him an opportunity to get a weapon. So I basically put my foot in the door. I said, no, come out here now and talk to me. So I eased him outside. He was wearing a blue jumpsuit. So I said, do you have any weapons on you? He said, no. Well, I patted him down anyway. And he looked around. I didn't understand what he was doing. I look back on it now. I know exactly what he was doing. He was looking around to see if there was any officers there to help me. He eyed me and knew that he was going to challenge me. I didn't feel it. I never saw that coming. It never got up on my radar. Well, needless to say, you have a snap on your handcuff case, and it's very distinct. When you pop that snap, and he knew it. When I popped that handcuff case, I was pulling my cuffs out. He immediately took his elbow and got me in the side of the head, and it hit me so hard, it knocked me down. And at that time, he pulled me into his apartment, and while he did, I tried to grab him and pull him over. When I did, he was able to get his arm around my neck and put me in a rear choke. And when he did, I pulled his, we're trained to get the arm off your throat, so I pulled it down right here, and I'm trying to call for another unit and put out a help call. A help call is a signal 63. Well, I got on the radio for what length of time I felt I could and said, radio signal 63, 3112, 63, whatever I could say. But unfortunately, the technology we had back then would not allow two officers to talk at the same time. So another officer was asked to go to dinner when I put my help call out, and they never heard that I was needing help. So nobody's coming. So it comes to a point when you realize that you're in more danger than you can afford to be, and you need to take drastic measures. Well, while he had me in the choke, he was also hitting me in the side of the head with his fist over and over. And it was getting to the point where I needed to take some drastic measures. And while you're not trained to use deadly force in a physical encounter, if you don't use it fast enough, well, you're already injured to the point where you're not going to make a good decision. So when I finally got to the point where I need to get this guy off me, because if I don't, well, I may not survive, I decided to pull my firearm and fire a shot into him. So when I did, I pulled my firearm and I tried to shoot him this way, and then I tried to shoot him this way, but he's up on me, so I'm missing him. So I fired what I thought was everything in my firearm, and when I fired it again, just to empty it, because I'm thinking my backup's going to come through the front door, I don't want to shoot him. I didn't want to fire out the window because I was afraid that I might hit somebody in the public through, around going out in the public somewhere. So I knew I needed to get the firearm unloaded, because if I lost consciousness, he would have it. Well, so I fired the firearm and it went click, click, click. So I thought it was empty. So I discarded it. And I went for my second weapon on my leg. Well, he grabbed the gun. And if you understand the nomenclature of a firearm, when you don't pull the trigger but halfway back, it'll skip around. So I skipped around, and we carried revolvers back then. And my weapon was loaded. And when I grabbed my second weapon, he grabbed the gun and put it right to the back of my head. And I didn't know that it was there. And so when he fired it, the bullet went in my brain about 4.5 inches deep. I was still conscious. I felt like that if I was conscious, that he didn't shoot me. And that's where I was thinking. And so, but I could feel the blood running down the back of my neck. So I thought what he did is shot across me like that, and that he didn't have the guts to put a hole in me, but he did. And so while I'm laying there, I said, Lord, look, I'm here because I believe you wanted me here. And if it's my time, I'm ready. Come take me. But if not, I have total faith in you. You will provide that cover and healing and whatever I need. So I'm going to do what you need me to do. So I pulled my second gun and drew around. I said, drop it. He laid the gun down, held his hands up like that. And at that time, his spouse or whatever ran over and laid on him and said, don't kill him, don't kill him. So I got her and him at gunpoint. I said, I'm not going to shoot you. Just stay right there. So while I had him at gunpoint, I could feel myself losing consciousness. So I was thinking, okay, if I fall out and he gets the second gun, I'm finished. But before I could take any action, I passed out. He took my second weapon and fired all 5 rounds at my face about 3 foot away while he's standing up. And those bullets hit the ground right here. I don't know how he missed 3 feet away other than something pushed those bullets. Because when they hit the ground, the lead hit me in the face and left little red dots. I don't know if you ever came to the hospital, but everybody said I had red dots all over me. Those were where the bullets fragments came apart, and he didn't get me but once. So I'm laying there, and about that time, I regained consciousness, and my guys are going, are you okay? I said, look, I'm fine. Just, I think I got a busted open head. And they know that it's a lot worse than that. They said, okay, stay calm. We got somebody coming. So the paramedics came. They threw me on the ambulance. They're, having small talk with me. And they're saying, look, they started putting compression things on my legs. And I remember in the police academy, when those things go on you, you're in bad shape. And I'm thinking, they just cut these brand new pants off me.
Y'all gonna replace them.
Right. So they put those compression things on there. And then one of my 2 female officers took their shirt off and put their T-shirt on my head to stop the bleeding. I don't remember this, but I was told that. So apparently I was in pretty bad shape. But I didn't have a worry in the world. I knew everything was fine. And the other part of this is they got me down to Grady from northwest Atlanta in 4 minutes. That's almost unheard of. Now, this is a Sunday evening. Do doctors, neurosurgeons work on Sunday evenings?
Of course not.
There was one at Grady that night.
I have a feeling you're about to say there won't work that night.
So at 7 p.m., they rolled me into surgery. They cut this whole side of my head off, the whole skull. And the doctor went in there and cauterized everything. And at the last moment, he was about to close me up and write me off as dead. He said, let me go back in and try one more time, because they had another bleeder he couldn't get to. And he pulled the brain apart and went back in there and found it, because they had this technique they use. It's a laser cauterization. This is brand new technology in '89. And he went in there and cauterized it, sucked the extra blood off, because blood kills brain cells. You cannot have a bleeder in the brain. It's like a stroke. You will lose function. You will lose cognitive ability, and you will die. So he stopped the bleeding. They put some brain monitors in me, and they sewed me up and said, well, we'll see. Well, they kept me they put a throat monitor on me. They kept tubes in both arms, both legs. So I was laid up at Grady, and they kept me sedated for a month with that thing down my throat. And they kept putting stuff in front of me to write on. I kept saying, get the tube out. And all it would be was a G, and I'd fall back out. So after they pulled the tube out, the nurse practitioner that the city hired gave me her card, and I read it. Every line. I said, Nancy Grace, nurse practitioner, this, that, and the other. And she's like, what? Because she had already told my parents that I was probably not going to have any cognitive ability and that life was going to drastically change. And she said, that's a good sign, because most people can't read or write ever again.
Well, you just got a bullet in your brain.
Yeah.
That's right. But guess what? Cognitively, zero damage. Matter of fact, I went to a neuropsych and they found nothing wrong. Not only did I pass it once, I passed it 3 times. I graduated college, cum laude. Now, if you're a crazy person and you ask yourself, am I a crazy person? Well, you're not. If you're injured and you have a brain injury and you want to know, hey, what part of my brain is injured, and you're asking the question, you usually know the answer. There isn't any. Now, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to let y'all ask it. There's a person in this room that knew me before I was shot and after I was shot. And I'm going to let y'all ask him whether he thinks that there was anything, any part of this injury that it was permanent, other than, I had some left-sided paralysis that I had to work through to recover. But it took me about 7 years, and the department cleared me for full duty. I qualified at the pistol range. I passed functional capacity assessment, graduated college, and they promoted me. 6 years later, I was made a sergeant. They put me in charge of the underground precinct. Later, they moved me over to Mobile, put me in charge of the entire downtown Atlanta. So I ran the city for the last 9 years of my career. The Lord is good.
Yeah.
Amen.
And if you put your faith in him, you have got nothing to worry about. Now, all of that said, I did 27 years post-injury, and I moved to the most wonderful place on Lake Lanier you could ever imagine. So I live right on Lake Lanier in a wonderful place. Lord has blessed me beyond anything I could imagine. So let me ask you, Fred, you knew me when I was 21 years old, and you know me now at 58. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion of who I was then and who I am now?
Before you was shot, like you said, I did know you. After you was shot, after you came back to the department, there was not one difference in your personality, the way you reacted to people. You was the same Richard that I knew before you got shot. There's no doubt about it. And I was really surprised. I mean, the battle that he fought is one that is if it's not God there, then he would be dead right
It's
now.
a miracle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Nothing less.
No question. Yeah.
Jesus Christ is infallible, and
Yes.
it proved it right there.
Well, part of my recovery, physical recovery, they assigned me to the police academy, and it was not a very good environment. I was not treated with dignity and respect, and I petitioned to go recover in an area that I felt where people were had a belief and a faith that similar to my own, and it was Fred Brooks and Pat Lipscomb in the auto theft unit, and they assigned me up there. And Fred got to witness, and I got to be around people that I truly believed would support my best interest. And there were statements made by others that said, you're never going back to work. You're never getting your gun and badge back. Your career's over. You might as well take your pension. And I could have got a medical pension, but that wasn't what it was about. I could have took a pension and, went and lived somewhere else or what have you. But that wasn't what it was about. It was about, I believed that, I was still capable of doing the job, and I was going to prove it. And it took 6 years. It took an immense amount of physical training and, being in shape. But the Lord had prepared me. My military career, I knew what it was going to take. Going down there and taking a functional capacity assessment test and qualifying the pistol range, it's not easy. You know, it's not easy for people that haven't been injured. And so, you know, I practiced and I made sure that I was prepared before I went down there. And, you know, some of the people I work with is like, you got this. You know, you got this. Well, you know, you're always going to have doubt in your abilities. But, you know, right before I would always say, okay, Lord, here I am. You know, I'm fixing to do this test. You know, prepare me and make sure that I've done everything I could do to accomplish this. And everything worked out.
It's funny you bring that up about nothing changing, because after I got a phone with you this week when I asked you to come over, when we hung up, Dad said that he's like, you know, it's so crazy. He's gone through all this stuff, and he goes, he's still the same guy he was before as he was after. And he goes, and people have always gravitated to him because you've always been like a very joyful kind of like positive person. And he said, and nothing ever changed. Like, even because we all know that most people who go through hard times or whatever, a lot of people play the victim or the woe is me, and it's funny that it came up because the first thing he said was like, hey, he's the same old guy he was before and after.
I can't run like a gazelle anymore. But, you know, I mean, the thing of it is after you go through something catastrophic, you know, you're thankful for what little bit you have, especially when you see somebody else in a wheelchair that has 0% of walking again. When I was at Emory after the injury, the doctor said that he will never walk again. His police career is over, and so is his flight career. And, okay, you know, that's your opinion, but was there a 1% chance? There was. And I grabbed that and I said, I'm going to prove it. 2 months later, I walked out of Emory Hospital, and they were like, wow. You know, it's just, you know, if the Lord gives you those tools, then you need to grab onto them, because it could have been a situation where it was so bad that I couldn't have had any kind of quality of life. But he gave me, you know, the Lord always push you to the edge, and they'll never push you over. So, you know, I said, okay, well, you accept the cards that were dealt, and you make the best of them. And I said, well, the Lord gave me the training, the mindset, and the physical abilities to beat this, and I'm going to set the standard. And to this day, I have other officers. Matter of fact, I just got a call last week from Max Brewer. I don't know if y'all have heard that name. He was the one that was hit by the four-wheeler while he was on his motorcycle, and he's nearly lost his leg. And he's now recovered and gone back to work. And the personnel office, J.Y. Straut of Atlanta, called me and said, Max Brewer wants to talk to you. I said, hey, man, how can I help you? And I said, it's up to you. How far you want to go? Do you want to go back to full duty, or you want to say this is enough policing for me? He goes, well, I want to work. I said, well, then I said, you're talking to the right person, because you have the law, and you have workers' comp, and you have friends and family, and you have a department that supports you. And if you want to work, we'll make that happen. And, you know, here's my number, call me. So other officers that are going through similar situations where they're injured, call me now for advice. And I'm all ears. So the Lord has put me in a particular position to be helpful.
That's awesome.
I told Richard when they transferred me to the academy the last few days of my career, and I was a range master, and I taught police survival, and they told me that Richard was coming out there to qualify, and they said that they didn't think he was going to make it, and for me to particularly not to give him any hope of qualifying, because they didn't think he was going to qualify. They didn't want me to, I mean, you know, I guess push him a little bit, help him out a little bit. And so I
bend the rules.
Yeah. They didn't want me to bend the rules, because they didn't want him back on the street. And so when he came out there,
Phasing out.
yeah, when he came out there, I took him through the course, and I didn't bend the rules. He shot the same course that an active 20-year-old police officer shot. and I got his scores, and I carried him back to the academy, to the major. And the major she says, how bad did he fail? I said, well, Major, I'm gonna be honest with you. I said, I carried him through the course. I got his targets out in the car if you want to see them. And I said, he shot better than half of the academy staff. She says, really? I said, yes, ma'am. She says, and you didn't do anything to help him? I said, no, ma'am.
In case anyone's wondering, that's with a revolver.
Yeah.
With a revolver.
Yeah.
Have y'all?
Actually, that was with a new 9mm.
Oh, so
I'd already
okay.
qualified with it a year earlier. Fred came out my second year.
Yeah.
So I already knew I was going to smoke it. But see, the guy before him was a gentleman by the name of Sergeant Rudy Preston, and he warned him. He said, he's going to kill this test. I've already seen him shoot. He's good.
Yeah, and you know, when you're shooting and everything with a 9, you know, you got to exchange magazines. You know, you got to, you know, and he did everything to the books and in the time limit.
I bet that was tough though, learning that with the left-sided.
Well,
cross.
what I had to do was, you know, I had to develop a technique. You know, what you've got to do is, when you drop your magazine, you're supposed to use your left hand to pull the magazine out and then put it in the well of your magazine and then hit the slide forward. Well, what I had to do was, and you got to remember, your barrel always has to point down range. So what I had to do was I had to turn the weapon over and put it in my left hand and then put it, because I could do it that way, but I would run out of time. So it'd take me too long to turn and do all that. So I'd basically just stuff it over there and stuff that in there and lock it forward. Boom, I'm ready to go. And so they like, well, you can't do all that. I'm like, there's nothing in the SOP that says that you can't switch hands.
And you have to do all that and then gain sight picture.
That's correct. And get on target. And then I had to go down to one knee and reload on one knee and get back up. You know?
And he's doing that quickly. Like,
you got to do
I'm watching him mess with his hands right now. I'm telling you right now, it's unbelievable the amount of extra steps that he's putting into this and to most of us, it's extremely simple, right? You know, you have the mechanism where you're pulling out the magazine. You have the, you know, the hand motions that you normally do, and he just added 3 extra ones and was able to do better than half the step. That is crazy.
I'll tell you one part of the test. He's on the 10-yard line, and he's got to shoot 3 rounds, reload, shoot 3 rounds. And it's got to be 2 center mass, 1 to the head, reload, center mass, 1 to the head, and you got 18 seconds to do it. And he did it.
With that extra steps in the reload,
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So I can tell you what he was able to do before he was shot.
Sharpshooter over here. This guy. You got Einstein and you got like Jason Bourne all in one.
That's a little much, but you know, the thing of it is it didn't come easy. I knew, okay, first off, you know, they're going to be using extra scrutiny on me, so I'm going to have to be extraordinary in my efforts, and I'm going to have to make them feel that, you know, I'm not going to be some reckless radical out there. You know, I want to be on the team again, and you know, I'm going to have to be someone that says I have the ability to do this, but you shouldn't fear me. And although I might have thought that way, Sergeant Brooks will tell you there was people in the back office going, we need to find a way to extricate him from the department. And they would do everything in their effort to do it. And I had to basically convince them that, you know, I was going to be an asset to the department and not an adversary. And I had to almost rebuild a respectable reputation, and these people were not easily convinced. I had a lot of enemies in the department, so it took patience and fortitude and a lot of keeping my mouth shut. Although, you know, I had some people, it was some I wouldn't say some people that you would not think that would come to your aid did. So I had some unlikely friends that came out of the woodwork that said, look, we support you, and we're going to do everything we can to help you. We don't like how you're being treated, and we're here for you. And some of those individuals requested me in their units, and went behind the scenes and advocated on my behalf. And it wasn't until years later that I found out who these individuals were. And basically, you know, it was a welcome piece of knowledge.
Well,
yeah, if that's not a direct manifestation of God's divine plan for you, right? Seriously, seriously, as a Christian, I mean, and not only that, you're a soldier of God, but you're a peacekeeper among men, right? And that's so cool because He obviously had a plan for you. Because otherwise, there's no way that would happen the way that it did. There's no way. You know, all those people coming out, all the unlikely figures to help facilitate your life. I mean, wow.
let me tell you something, show you something else. Richard, did they take the bullet out of your brain?
Didn't take it out.
Still there.
How do you get on a plane?
150. It's lead. They don't pick up lead. So 158 grain hopper.
With a body scanner.
Whoa! See, it wasn't. The thing of it is I walked around for a year with this whole side of my head cut open, so I had this indention, and so Dr. Piquet was my neurosurgeon, and he says we're gonna fix your skull, Richard. We got you lined up for January. And so what they did was took me into Emory, and they had this new thing called a cranioplast. It's basically like the butt of an M16. It's malleable, and it hardens. And so they pulled the skin apart, and then they weaved it into the brain right here. So this whole side of my head is the butt of an M16.
So
that's the most American thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Right. So
America.
my head is harder than the stock of
RoboCop.
Well, there you are. So,
And he has more hair than I do.
So, well, if you look, I have to go to I have to tell my barber, I'm like, look, I go to Robert, he's my barber up in Gainesville. I said, look, I got this ridiculous scar that goes from here to here. So I don't want you to cut the hair off of that, kind of leave it over. So he has to, fix my hair so it doesn't show off my Frankenstein wound.
First time you go to get your hair cut, if you go somewhere new, you need to let them just cut it. But what'd you do to me?
Or shave my head. Then I wouldn't even need a costume for Halloween.
Well, I was one of the questions we usually ask is, so what was the biggest thing, or how did faith affect your role in your life and your career and all that kind of stuff? But you pretty much
I was say you answered it.
It's like, that's not even a question. And I'm going to tell you something. I thought this was pretty awesome, and I was thinking about it, like you said that God ain't ever going to push you over. And a lot of people make that comment. God's never going to give you something you can't handle, and I don't believe that. That's not true, because there's things that we can't handle all the time, but God lets you go through that because He's looking for you to call out to Him. He's looking for you to say, God, I need you, and He'll help. Because with God, you can do anything, and yes, you're not going to get pushed because you got God to rely on. Well, you did that. You in your life, you raised your hands. You said, God, take me, I'm giving it all to you. And at that moment, He pretty much said, all right, yeah, you're about to go, you're a little forward in your life. You're about to get shot in the head, and I'm going to show you what I can do for you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and that's crazy. And then He also created an opportunity from all of this to help other men and other women and other people in the service that might not think they haven't, that their hope is lost, and they've created something after your career to where you can encourage them to do the same thing you did. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty awesome, because that's something you can do till the day you die.
Well, there's so many more. I don't want to go too far into the weeds with it, but there was so many doors that opened up this, because I gained such a reputation of being somebody on the forefront, fighting the department, fighting the machine, hey, I want to be cleared for full duty. Well, once I reached that pinnacle, I became the president of one of the labor unions in Atlanta, and I wrote a piece of legislation along with the mayor's office that allowed us to enjoy a better pension. I increased the disability pension for those catastrophic injury to get 100% of their pay.
Ooh. Can you come out
we got a 1%. I wrote a piece of legislation where Sergeant Brooks and I got a 1% increase in our pension. Well, lucky for us, they didn't look at what 1% meant. Well, if you have a 2% and you get a 1% raise, that's 50%.
That's huge.
So they didn't know the number.
Yeah, it's huge.
But we're able to enjoy life after serving the public. I mean, we earned it. It should be that way. We weren't the only one with that type of pension. You had NYPD, LAPD, Miami PD had a very similar pension, but we wanted to be on par with those guys, and Atlanta finally got it in 2000. Believe it or not, it was one of the most controversial mayors in Atlanta history that signed it, but he wanted to regain respect from police, and that's why he signed that piece of legislation. And the individual that passed it through the Finance Committee is now the Fulton County Commission Chair, Rob Pitts.
Okay.
So Rob and I were very close, and he helped me get that passed. So,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
It seemed like even after this tragic event happened to you, and then of course all the steps that you had to take to regain your ability to continue being a peacekeeper, being this facilitator of defending the law, right, to the public, and serving, your community. You seem to have done it without trepidation. You seem to have done it without any sort of apprehensiveness. You did it, just, like seamlessly.
Yeah, like
and not with any fear. Naturally, you were fearless.
When the Lord opens these doors, you don't realize it's happening. I went to college, and in my college major, it was public administration. He was teaching me what's coming with the city of Atlanta, so I knew the answers before they brought them to me. I knew that we were a BFOQ job. Nobody's ever heard that term. That's a bona fide occupational qualification. There was no physical standard. The only thing you do as a police officer after you pass the academy is qualify with your pistol. I learned that going to college after my injury. So I knew they couldn't test me. I did it anyways to prove to them I could, but all I wanted them to do was give me the opportunity to shoot, and they were denying me that. They may or may not have known, but what they were scared of is me going out there and either getting killed or killing somebody. Who knows what their thoughts were, but they didn't want any part of me coming back to work. Although they had let other people who were injured continue to work in a light duty capacity. They ended that policy in '94, and they started coming after me with a vengeance to basically separate me from the department in no uncertain ways, because they had done it to others. And the other part of it is they were trying to take my sworn status from me and turn me into a civilian, which means that I would have had to work till I was 62 in some other job that I wasn't interested in.
So, one last thing. I mean, it's really plaguing my mind, because I really think that it would help a lot of people, and you would be a great outlet for this question. How does someone deal with fear in the face of total uncertainty and rapidly evolving situations, and then of course, tragic situations that happen to them, such as you did, overcoming that fear? How did they deal with that?
Wow.
Or how did you deal with that?
I really never had any fear. If you have faith, you don't have to worry about it. It just, I look at it, I'll give you an example, and I hope this illustrates. If you're a soldier on the battlefield and you're facing an enemy, okay, you don't have time to be in fear. Okay, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get below the line of fire, and you're trying to protect yourself and others. And it's the guy next to you is you're more worried about than yourself. And if you focus on helping your fellow man and not worry about yourself, then fear is not going to be an item.
That's where your training comes in.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Amen.
Because we all deal with that in our professions.
Sure.
We don't think it's weird, like you said. When stuff happens to you, you don't realize it's happening at the time. You realize it later on. It's like,
and you say, "Wait a minute, I might not have done that."
Yeah,
hindsight's 2020. But in the moment,
because there's probably calls that y'all been on, and I'm sure calls that Clinton I know that I've been on, where I look back on it, like when I was actually thinking about it, I was like, I should have, man, I realize that was a little as sketchy as it really was when I started to go do it.
I'm glad I listened to it when they taught me.
Well, the thing of it is when I became a sergeant, I didn't want any of my guys to go through what I went through. I made sure that there was other people with them. And for that, I gained a lot of respect for the troops that I supervised. I said, you're not going to go out here, and I'm not going to be going to your mom or dad and telling them what happened to you. You are going to wait, you're going to be patient, and you're going to get other officers with you. We are not going to do this as individuals. Okay, we are teams, and we are going to go home tonight together. Okay, and from that when I said that in roll call, it galvanized my troops. And to this day, I still get phone calls for those guys saying, hey, Sergeant, we need you back down there. I said, I know you do. I think my time has come and gone. You need to take those principles I taught you, and you need to get out there and do that.
That's the key. That's the key right there.
Yes.
In my interview, when I went to go interview for lieutenant, they asked me a question like, what is one of your main goals in your new role? And I told them, I said, well, one of my main goals is to make the guys under me better than me. Because if I can do that, that means that the future is still going to where it needs to go. And a lot of times when we see these kids nowadays, when we coach, or when Dad and I coach baseball and stuff like that, like the adversity that you went through, like I'm trying to think of like, I don't know many like youth or people nowadays that have that mentality anymore. Like and I think that some of that is people trying to get into positions and doing things that they might not be prepared for yet, and then not knowing how to deal with that, and then they're training their guys a little, I don't want to say wrong but maybe not to where they should have taken that, taken a little bit more time and helped learn the status quo, a little bit better, instead of just doing it for I think a lot of it, because in our profession we've lost the good pensions, we've lost a lot of medical, stuff. So now people are promoting and going ahead and quicker and faster because that's the only way they can really earn more money to help their lifestyle. I'm not blaming them for what they're doing. I'm just saying that they're pushing a corner, and I think that stinks. And one of the guys was like, he said, "Oh, that's a really great answer. I really appreciate that." Blah blah. And then the same guy later said, he's like, "What would you do if something happened in the station?" And I said, "Well, I would keep it kind of on a first level. I'd try to keep it in the station, not tell anybody, but all right, let's handle this right here so that we can learn from it. We'll let the chief know or whatever, but we don't need to. This stops right now." And he was like, "Well, you don't want to ever say handle it in the station," but I think you misunderstood me, because that's one of the things that when you're preparing your guys and strengthening your guys, it's a trust issue is a lot in public safety and in politics. And if you can train those guys to do what they're supposed to do the right way, the way the book says it, the way that the county wants it, they can still develop that foundation of trust with their guys, and then treat them how to teach the guys under them. Not you want your guys to be better, and you're trying to train them to be good leaders that are respected. Because we have a lot of leaders that take that power trip, and they don't care about the guys under them. It's all about them. But it's like you said, you went on the battlefield, and this is how you become a good crew or a good department. Is you're a team. It's always about team. It's always about improving the people around you, because if you improve them, you will be improved. So
Something else. There's two things that I hope people get out of this. Richard, if you had not accepted the Lord as your Savior at an early age, and you did not know the Lord when this happened, you wouldn't be here right now.
Ain't no way. Ain't no way.
He wouldn't be here.
I
Not
agree.
at all.
I agree.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and it shows the power of prayer. Because I know his family prayed.
As a matter of fact, my church was having church at 7 p.m. when I was shot, and it went on the news, and they ran in and told the pastor, and the whole church started praying.
And there was
Pine Lake Baptist Church, where I was a member.
There were many prayer circles with police officers.
Yeah.
That night.
Weeks after that, and that night you couldn't get to the hospital because of the number of police officers that were there.
And I didn't realize I had such an effect on other police officers, because, I was fairly new. I was only 3 years old. But, I'd made a lot of contacts, and I don't think I had and the enemy on the police department. I never met a police officer that I didn't make a connection with.
We were working a second job at the Omni when it came over the radio. And, of course, we didn't know who it was. And then we called the precinct, and they told us that it was Richard, and that he was at Grady. Well, there was 22 officers working an extra job that night. We got off at 12. And all 22 of us went to Grady and stood out there at Grady until we could hear what was going, that he was going to be okay. We didn't really realize we knew he'd been shot in the head, but we didn't know how bad he'd been shot in the head. But when we got there were so many police officers down there.
Oh, well, the fire department brotherhood and the police brotherhood, all that, man.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing like that. We ran this the guy who this year, the Covington police officer that was shot, and the perp was standing over him about to shoot him in the back of the head and finish him off, and his partner came around the corner and popped him and killed the perp, and that guy lived. He got shot in the face. It went in here. But we were on that scene setting up helicopters to get him transported and everything, and I'm not playing with you. Like, within 20 minutes of him being shot, there was probably 100 police cars from all over, like not just from Newton County and Covington. I mean, Walton County, Morgan County, Rockdale, they had that place swarmed. It's like, and it's incredible to watch that. Like, there's nothing that makes Clint. I don't know about the police, but man, I'm telling you what, there's nothing that gets me going, like, and makes me feel that brotherhood more when you're going down, when you're going to a structure fire, and then one of your other engines is coming in right in behind you, and you're like hauling butt down the highway. No, man, it is like a convoy, and you're just like, yeah, here comes the cavalry,
I love rolling out as a company.
Oh, it's amazing.
If you're at a station that's got multiple fire apparatus, you pull out together, going down the man.
It is incredible.
It's fun.
Well,
especially if you got a header.
You meet, as a police officer, you meet firemen and you meet these paramedics and stuff, and you meet them, but you really don't get to know them. Well, the paramedic that was on duty that night, I'd actually got to know him, and he, when I rolled in the back of the ambulance, I looked up at his face, and that scared me because I saw his expression, and he knew that I saw him, and he immediately went professional.
Yeah.
And what he did was he didn't know who I was until he wiped the blood off my name tag.
Oh, man.
And he says, and I could see him. I saw the tears start rolling down his face. And I'm like, why is this paramedic crying? And he leans down and he leans down and whispers in my ear. He goes, "Hey, Richard, I'm gonna take care of you. You're gonna be okay." And I said, "Thank you." And the next thing I know, it's lightning down to Grady, rolling me in. I could hear people screaming and yelling when I'm coming out of the ambulance, and they're rolling me in there. This was the old way where you'd come off of Butler and come up the old ramp, it wasn't the new side. And so, I'm like, why are these people screaming? And I heard some guy say, he's dead, he doesn't even know it. And I'm like, who in the heck is that fool?
That's crazy.
So, they're yelling. It's like, they had a nickname for it. It's called the freak show. They would line up watch the people coming in injured.
This civilians would.
Civilians.
Yeah,
right.
On Friday and Saturday nights, they would come and line up on the ramp and watch people that was coming in.
What kind of demented sideline activity is that?
It's like watching that TV show, Emergency 911. People watch it on TV. They got a TV show about it. They just did it without having to watch it on television.
They watch it live.
That's right. So, but it just so happened Dr. Osaka was a neurosurgeon on duty at Grady Sunday. And he was a student of Dr. McKay. And he's the one that handled the surgery. It was, miracle after miracle.
When was the last time you got to talk to him?
I never talked to him, but when I went to Grady, I had my rehab doctor is the one that basically put the team together for my recovery. And, you know, I did my 2 months there, and then I did outpatient at, you know, where I went in and did, you know, my physical therapy and occupational therapy for the next couple of years. And 27 years later, my doctor, who I was working on getting my workers' comp settlement and never got any money for that injury, said, well, you're supposed to get paid for that. You know, you get a few dollars for it. I said, okay, well, let's see what we can do. So he goes, I got this doctor up in Roswell who does these evaluations. And I walked in, my rehab doctor from back then, and we're having a, you know, conversation, and he starts crying. He says, I've never seen anybody come back from something so horrific. And so
especially in the rear, that's the part of the, you know, the brain that's hard to.
That's right.
A lot of people, like when we run suicides and stuff a lot, you know, they'll blow the front of their face off, or the front of their brain off, and they don't kill themselves because they're just, you know, blowing off the cognitive stuff. And
right, part of the miracle is that my understanding is that the bullet went in between. You know, your brain has like sections.
Yeah.
And there's dividing lines. And my understanding, it went between them all.
Oh my God.
Goodness gracious.
So, I mean, how did that happen? I mean,
God
you know,
parted the waters.
Yeah.
So, because, I mean, if you know, when
I believe this.
I mean, morbidly, I was in the rehab center, and I'm in there with all these head injured patients, and I'm like, they're looking at me like, these guys, it was like, you know, did you ever see the one who flew over the cuckoo nest and they're in the crazy house? Can you imagine being put in there? That's what I felt like I was at the rehab center with all these brain injuries. People, I'm like, they're looking at me like all these people in there. I'm not them, I promise. It was sad because these people could not feed themselves.
Yeah.
And if, you know, I learned I probably could be a brain surgeon or somebody that assess brain injuries because of all what I was exposed to. Because, I mean, you know, you talk about the damage to the frontal lobes, you lose your judgment. I mean, you don't know what's coming out of your mouth if your frontal lobes are damaged. It's people with dementia, you know, they can't remember anything. You know, I based on, you know, when I was in the rehab center, you know, I learned all these things. And I'm like, how in the world, you know, you have doubts about yourself. How in the world am I shot in the head and I'm able to communicate? You know, you start to have doubts about yourself. And you know, you have to just say, Lord, thank you for, you know, sparing me. My goodness, you know, it could have been so much worse. You know, life would not be joyful. And, you know, people say, well, what'd you want to live for? You're crippled and walking around. I said, look, I've got 6 beautiful nephews and nieces, and I want to see how they grow up. I don't want to be in the grave. You know, I want to see how these kids, you know, they look up to me. You know, I'm their Uncle Richard. And to this day, 2 of my nephews grew up to be attorneys in Dallas, and one of them is a financial advisor. My second oldest niece is a computer engineer. And, I mean, it's just wonderful being able to be a part of their lives. And now my youngest niece has 2 children. My brother and sister-in-law have a daughter and has a daughter and about to have another one. So I'm a great uncle, you know, and so awesome. Wondering, you know, seeing my nephews and nieces, you know, life is great.
Family of geniuses.
Right.
Whole thing.
They're pretty smart kids, and it's fun, you know, mixing it up with a couple lawyers.
Man.
I want to bring up something that you mentioned at the beginning part of your testimony, talking about being pressed by the Lord and feeling that pressing.
Wait.
And you may not have meant it like this, but my mind went straight to like a wine press and being pressed and molded by God into and having that new wine come out of your life. And I think your response to each of those situations, you know, feel like you're being pressed. You said it was like a
right. We had a retreat.
A retreat, yeah. I'm
where
sorry.
we were like, singing gospel and
Yeah.
praising God and reading scriptures and having Bible studies
Yeah.
and things like that. It was over a long weekend.
Yeah. So during the retreat, and then
Yeah, the
when
Lord
you were
started.
when you were in the military, and
He was laying, pressure on me.
Yeah.
And you could tell. He's like, I've got plans for you, and you need to surrender to my way of doing things.
That's
and
right.
I'm like, nope, not doing that, buddy.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
But
I'm not your guy. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
I got my own life.
Yeah.
And everything starts working out, and you're like, Lord, why? And look, I don't want to do that. Go find someone else, because you can tell. There's no doubt, Lord speaking to you. You can't deny it. It gets to a point where it's painful. And the minute you say, okay, I'll do it, I surrender, take me. Let me tell you something. The pressure's off. It's almost like you just finished running a marathon. And once you do that, you say, okay, based on all of my training and knowledge, once you surrender to the Lord, what do you have to fear?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, your response in every situation like that. I mean, that was, to me. I don't know. I started viewing that as like a wine press, and you allowing the new wine to come out of you, which is Jesus. Living in the Spirit,
Right.
living and working in your life.
Well, look,
And
there's some times you say,
but it's
well,
been every step of the way.
I know I surrendered, Lord, but this is a lot.
Yeah.
I was carrying about 90 pounds of gear on my back on a 12-mile road march up a mountain at Fort McClellan. I'm like, all right, Lord, all right, give me some energy or something. This is much. And I mean, my legs were rubber bands, my feet were bleeding. I got a rifle, and guess what happens about that point? They release the CS gas on you. So you got no breath, 12-mile road march, 90 pounds of gear, you're carrying a rifle, and they're gassing you. I said, if I can handle this, Lord, what else you going to throw at me? I got it.
A lot of this remind me of a verse in Psalms. It's Psalm 62, 7 and 8. It says, my salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. And pretty much everything that you talked about in your testimony always leads to that. Because without that, you had no refuge. What do you lean on? People can only help us and take us so far,
That really ties into the fear element.
Yeah.
He was your refuge, truly.
Yeah.
To the definition, to the T. And I mean, you were talking about you were fearless, and we were making jokes about RoboCop, But I mean, when it comes down to it, jokes aside, like, if God is truly your refuge, the fear of the world is not an element. Now, to be smart with the world is different, but to not have fear of the effects of the world is significant. And you had that through true refuge. That's amazing.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I've always tried, and I don't know if I will ever get to this point or accomplish it, but I always tell Megan, I fail a lot, and I'm not perfect. I'm way far from it, and I think I come short from what I'm about to say. But I want my influence on life to be great, but I want God to be able to use my influence on life after I'm gone, because at some point He is going to take me. It might be in a situation in a fire. It might be in a car wreck. Whatever. But I want my influence now to be able to be used after I'm gone. That God, and like your story is like that too. Like this is part of what we're doing here. I told somebody the other day that I invited my dad to come on because he was a police officer in the city of Atlanta, and I respected him, and everybody I've known respects him. But after you recorded and I listened to it, it just dropped this past week, by the way, everybody. But after I recorded and listened to it, I thought to myself, I was like, wow, I didn't realize this, but now I have something that I'll always have if he passes before me. And I can listen to him like talk about God and talk about his career and talk about his life. And I said, man, that's it's incredible to me, because that's something I can pass on, and that's a legacy that's gonna reflect God in his past. Doesn't matter what he did before. and it makes me feel really humbled to hear when you talk about you want to be around men like him, because as a child I just figured that's how I'm supposed to feel, and then I hear you say that, and you talk about another one, Pat Lipscomb. I mean that.
Let me tell y'all something.
I tell you what.
Fred Brooks and Pat Lipscomb are men's men. Okay, they're guys that I don't care how big and muscly you are, you're gonna look up to them too. They were men's men, and they were real cops, and you wanted to be them.
Real recognizes real.
That's right.
No matter
I
where
mean,
you at,
look, Superman doesn't have anything on Fred Brooks.
there you go. You know, it's not even just the deep voice. It's the command of the room. The deep voice will get you though.
But respect is earned. You don't give it to somebody because of, just because of, where they are or who they're signed to. They earn it. Yeah. They do things and you witness it. And you witness their compassion and their, ability to solve problems and not be excessive. Because it's easy to lose your temper and, basically beat someone down. That's easy to do.
Yeah.
What's hard to do is when you're getting spit on and all you do is handcuff the guy and wipe the spit off and contain your composure.
Proof is in the pudding.
That's a real man right there.
Yeah.
Because any other person that's not a man would basically rearrange that dude's face.
Yeah.
Because you have the authority to do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
But when you don't act and you do not act out, it's like, wow, I hope I have that composure when it happens to me. I'm not a big old tough guy, but that's how you're supposed to act.
Absolutely.
Well, Sergeant Straut, we're very, very blessed to have you on. I'm so glad that Dad and I got together and he called you and we were able to do this. And it was, he calls Dad the other day, and I'm out there, I'm signing in my 308, and Dad's like, he's like, all right, hold on. And he calls me over there, and I was like, hey, Sergeant Straut, how you doing? It's been forever. In fact, the last time I remember hanging out with him, I was riding in his
1985 Chevy
Corvette. And I remember my head slapping the back of the seat.
I gave y'all a ride.
Yeah, you did.
That was a fun car.
What was you, 8 years old?
I think I was like 8 or 9.
I think I stuffed you and your brother in the one seat together in Florida. Fred's going, don't hurt my kids. Oh, they'll be fine. I got nephews.
We got one to replace it. It's fine.
But it was awesome because he goes, well, wouldn't you want me to do it? And I said, well, honestly, we had a captain for the fire department. He wasn't able to do it, so we have an opening this Friday. I can ask somebody else because it's kind of. He goes, when do you want me there? And I said, booked. But it was. I really appreciate you on short notice, coming up here.
Sure.
I've been really looking forward to this, and I'm glad that it also got you up here so we could reunite and see each other and meet each other, and you and Dad could hang out a little bit, and it's been a complete blessing, and I really appreciate it.
Amen.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
y'all
coming.
for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Absolutely.
Also,
Yeah.
real quick, I do want to throw this out there. I know it's happening now, and when this was going to be posted, it's going to be a little farther, but I found out one of my best friends in the fire service, and I hope I don't get emotional, but he's also one of my mentors. We found out yesterday that he got injured in training. He broke his shoulder, and they had to fix his shoulder. Well, they found out a couple weeks later he was complaining about his back, and he's like, my back's really hurting me. He's like, his shoulder surgery was 3 weeks ago, and they went in there and they found 2 ruptured vertebrae. But what they also found is that he has cancer in 3 places. And it's been a day. I was pretty roughed up yesterday because this is my boy, and y'all know how it is. I mean, especially Clint being a fire service, you live with these guys. I was stationed with him for 4 or 5 years. So I mean, a third of my life, the 5 years, was with my buddy, and I call him the Sicilian King, man, because he's a Sicilian dude and he's real. and I love it. And he's taught me so much, and it just breaks me to see this happening to him. But what Dad and I were talking about is we're hoping that that this back injury has made them find this early enough. We don't know anything yet. They took biopsies this morning, and they're going to let us know. But I just want to let everyone to know that either way, he's going to have chemo, and he's going to have to go through that. They're doing back surgery on Tuesday, and they're going to basically go two up and two below, and basically pin him back together. And then after that, he's going to start chemo. So I just wanted to bring that up and ask if y'all could pray for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a family, have kids.
Yeah, he has 2 kids and his wife Shannon. I talked to her last night, and she said basically she's on autopilot. And I said, well, I know he's going through this, but you are too, because he's just a stud, dude. He's just a great guy.
What's his name?
How to drive a ladder truck. I mean, he's the one that taught me everything in my career. He's one of the guys that I can contribute most of my career, my knowledge, and what if there's any decency or good about me as a fireman, he's one of the top guys. Him and Dave Bernal and so many others that have really helped me, but he's one of the guys, and it's just rough for me to hear this. And he's in great spirits.
One thing about him too that impressed me with him was when we moved, we had me and Scott and Matt, and I think we had one more person.
Yeah.
And and Scott kind of mentioned to him that he needed, we might need some help moving. Well, the morning we started moving, he pulls up after doing a shift.
Yeah, he was.
Wow.
I'm talking about from Cherokee County.
He lives in Cherokee County. He showed up in Loganville, and he was there. I told him, I said, we're probably not going to start until about 9 o'clock. And I was going to get some coffee. It was like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And I look out the door, and he's parked out there on the road.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd only been with him 1 year at that point, which is still, a good amount of time to be with a guy when you're like us and living with him.
Right.
But, I mean, it's just, but, man, he came over, and Dad needed help with the sunroom. And he's the only, he's besides Boyd, my dad's good buddy,
Right.
he's the only one that came over to help. And I mean, he drove from Cherokee and went over there, and we did the ceiling, which is like
Right.
the worst part, where your arms are always like up this, and you're like all day long, your shoulders feel like they're about to fall off, and it's just, man, he's got a heart of gold, and
Yeah.
he's rough around the edges, but once you get, he's one of those guys that, man, he's just,
He's a true friend.
yeah, we don't understand why it's just, like I said, I'm doing a lot better now.
What's his name?
His name is Chris King.
Chris King. All right.
Yep.
The Respond family, be praying for Chris and Shannon and their family. But guys, we're gonna get out of here.
Can we throw this one up in the line? I'm serious. I mean,
Yeah.
Why not? And to get some
Sure.
prayers going. Yeah. So
Might be able to.
Well,
because like y'all said, I'm a firm believer in the power of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And just look at the testimony today.
yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prayer. So let's manifest that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
We can bump it up.
Cool.
But guys, we're gonna get out of here. We're gonna wrap this thing up. If you can relate to Sergeant Straut's testimony, maybe you're going through something similar with trying to get back to active duty. We can arrange a meeting or a phone call or something. So just reach out to us either on our Facebook page, Faithful Responders, or you can reach out to us by email, respondcommunity@gmail.com. But we're gonna get out of here, guys. Hope everybody has a blessed week. Stay safe.
Thank you again so much, Sergeant Straut. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Amazing.
All right, y'all. Peace.